They vow to love and cherish each other till death do they part. But nobody could have imagined Cody Johnson and his bride, Jordan Graham, would part so soon. Cody mysteriously vanishing just 8 days after their wedding.
I was just shocked. I didn't know what happened.
We spent a lot of time trying to figure out where he was.
At first, police treat it as a missing persons case. But the plot thickens when Cody's bride gets a message from a stranger.
She says, "Look, I got this email and Cody's dead."
Now police suspect Cody has been murdered, perhaps before he and his bride even consummated their marriage. Kalispell, Montana. A country town known as the gateway to the majestic Glacier National Park in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Glacier National Park, a beautiful backdrop for a particularly ugly crime. A crime that would write a tragic ending to the love story of Cody Johnson and Jordan Graham, who had met at a church lunch and seemed like a match made in heaven.
She was a good girl.
And Cody was a good guy.
He was so funny, very caring, kind-hearted.
Cody told his mom right from the beginning he wanted to make Jordan his wife one day.
He was madly in love with her.
Cody was 24 and Jordan 21 when they met, and they shared the same dream of raising a family.
Cody was really looking forward to getting married. He loved children and couldn't wait to have his own. And he thought Jordan was the one for him.
But the two were also very different, says Cody's best friend, Jeremiah Herbold.
He really liked cars. That's where both of us really spent a lot of our time. And he enjoyed guns, shooting guns. But most of all, he liked to make people happy. And he was really good at doing it too.
Jordan, on the other hand, was more retiring, not nearly as social as Cody, and because of her religion, she didn't believe in sex before marriage.
She was very shy, very quiet, didn't have much to say, you know, just sort of reserved.
But Jordan's best friend, Hannah Owen, says she had a good heart and a way with kids.
We just all did a whole bunch of stuff. She watched my son. I trusted her with my son. They bonded, builded a huge relationship.
And some liked the influence Jordan had on Cody.
She got Cody into going to church with her, which she never did before. We all thought that those were good things.
But others worry that their relationship was a little one-sided.
He put a lot into the relationship that she didn't put back. He always wanted to hang out with her, and she would always make an excuse not to. He was madly in love with her. She, on the other hand, was distant towards him. They would go on dates and she would bring company. I never seen them hold hands. When we were get-togethers, I never seen them kiss. I never seen them flirt.
So many of their friends were surprised when, after dating for a little more than a year, Cody proposed to Jordan and she accepted.
I didn't think that she would say yes.
Was she even attracted to him?
I don't believe so.
So was she interested in the idea of being married?
I think she liked the idea of being married and having a wedding. I don't think she really wanted to, per se.
Jordan chose Kimberly Martinez as her matron of honor.
Leading up to her wedding, was she excited?
She was excited for the planning part, I think, not the actual wedding. Whenever that would come up, she would get kind of irritated.
Did she ever express any doubts that maybe Cody wasn't right for her?
She had asked me a couple of times if she was making the right decision, and I told her that I couldn't answer that question for her. I told her that if you have second thoughts about this, you need to talk to him about it.
She didn't. And when the big day finally arrived, Jordan's friends and guests were shocked by what really happened behind the joyous facade of these wedding photos.
She was kind of like shaking her head, like just bawling, like hysterically down the aisle. And when she got up there, she didn't look at him in the eyes. She was standing there holding his hand, and she was looking down at the ground the whole time. I started to panic a little bit watching her. Her face just looked like something was going to happen.
And the wedding celebration would end on a truly eerie and ominous note, as the bride and groom danced to a song Jordan had recorded with her own voice, foreshadowing what would happen to Cody 8 days later.
And it was talking about how you climb to a higher place and then you fall, but you're still mine.
Friends and family had just finished celebrating the couple's life together when they were immediately mourning a loss. Guests at the wedding of Cody Johnson and Jordan Graham had been shocked by what a reluctant bride she seemed behind the happy facade of these official photos.
It was very strange. It was very awkward.
And the morning after her wedding night with Cody, Jordan is beyond reluctant. She is despondent and regretful, writing in a text exchange with the matron of honor, Kimberly Martinez.
I don't know if all this was the right thing to do. So much happened last night. I just don't know.
Last night at the wedding or last night at the room?
Being married and after the wedding.
What happened after?
I'd rather talk about what happened, not text about it.
She said that it was just a miserable time, that they just really didn't enjoy it, and she just didn't seem very happy.
And Jordan never does tell Kimberly exactly what happened, even when they come face to face a couple of days later.
She came over and she laid on the couch and she just cried. She wouldn't tell me why. She wouldn't say anything to me.
The texts continue from Jordan for a week after the wedding, each one sounding more morose and desperate.
I just know he's gonna want to do stuff, and I'm not really wanting to.
And another.
Using the "my period started" spiel tonight. I freaking hope it works. Because if I'm forced to do something, I'm going to freak out.
Which begs the question, do you know if Cody and Jordan ever had sex?
I honestly don't think they did. I think she tried to I don't even think they had sex on the night of their wedding.
Did Jordan and Cody ever consummate their marriage?
She told me no. She said that they hadn't, that she didn't want to. She was nervous about it.
But 8 days after the wedding, their marital problems are suddenly over, when Cody mysteriously goes missing.
I was just shocked.
Cody's family and friends report his disappearance to police after they learned he had failed to show up for work.
It was totally out of character for him not to show up at work or come home or go to a friend's house. I didn't know what happened.
But oddly unconcerned is Jordan, who is making like the merry widow when Hannah sees her later that day at work.
She was hanging out, running around, skipping. She was going through the parking lot with her ice cream cone, just happy as can be.
Happy?
Oh yes, very happy. She was the happiest I've ever seen her.
Cody had last been seen the previous day at Dairy Queen having dinner with Jordan after Sunday church services. And then Jordan says they both went home together. What did Jordan tell you happened to him?
That he went out to the garage and she went to see him and he wasn't there. She said that she seen him leave with some buddies in a black car at Washington Plates.
Police would ask Jordan what she knew about those friends when they interviewed her the next day.
Well, I got a message saying that he was going to go for a ride with some of his out-of-town buddies that were visiting. I had no idea who they were, but he always told me this one thing is when his friends came to visit, he would take them to Glacier Park.
Jordan would tell conflicting stories about what happened before Cody drove off with them.
I specifically asked her when he left, were you guys fighting? And she said no.
And she told police the same thing.
You guys weren't having any kind of argument?
No.
But Jordan had earlier told Kimberly they did have a fight.
So she comes in and she proceeds to tell me that Cody had held her down when they were arguing and that she got away from him and he had grabbed his keys and scratched her.
The next day, after Cody had been missing for nearly 48 hours, Jordan's friends and family members gather at her house to try to find clues to what might have happened to him.
And that evening we spent a lot of time trying to figure out where he was, you know, trying to look on his Facebook page to see if he had posted anything or, you know, trying to see if she had, you know, his bank account information. Maybe we could look up and see if he used his debit card or something.
But Jordan seems uncomfortable.
She just became more agitated the more we asked.
At one point, Kimberly says Jordan becomes so upset, she takes off her wedding ring and flings it across the room.
I was confused. You know, I thought she would be legitimately wanting to find her husband and know what happened to him.
Kimberly has become very suspicious over Jordan's odd behavior and inconsistencies and calls her when she gets home.
I asked, what is going on? Why are your stories different? Why can't you seem to tell the truth? And I told her that we were done talking until this was all figured out.
And the police turn up the heat on her too.
I'm getting some inconsistencies in what you're telling me with other information that I've already gathered, okay? And I've spoke to a few people, and it's important that I know that you're telling me the truth on things.
And what I know.
Well,
I mean,
and I understand that, okay? But I think that there's more.
You've heard of the 7-year itch. Well, police say Jordan Graham only needed 8 days to realize she wanted out of her marriage. But did she want out bad enough to kill? Her husband of little more than a week has gone missing. She's told conflicting stories about their last day together to friends and police. And Jordan is under growing suspicion in Cody Johnson's disappearance.
She had a story to tell. Her story wasn't adding up.
But then she gets a stunning email from a stranger calling himself Tony the Carman.
And she says, look, I got this email and Cody's dead.
The mysterious Tony tells her Cody accidentally fell off a cliff in Glacier National Park while hiking with his friends from out of state. Tony's email reads in part, "Hello Jordan, my name is Tony. There is no bother looking for Cody anymore. He's gone."
And I'm like freaking out, like, what are you talking about? And I read the email and it says, Cody's gone, Jordan.
Any emotion?
No. She wasn't crying at all. She was just showing me this email and I start shaking. And I told her to go to the cops and she did go. But I was kind of just like rushing it, like, go, move. Like, what are you doing? Don't just stand here looking at me.
The email only makes police even more suspicious of Jordan.
The email that she provided to us stated that these unknowns that he had taken off with, as well as this Tony person, had seen him fall from a cliff or at the very least disappear, and that she was given explicit instructions to tell the police to call off the search. There was no more need to search for him. And I think at that point she expected us to just walk away from it.
Lead Detective Corey Clark of Kalispell PD is also struck by Jordan's lack of emotion.
I said, I just need to point something out. I said, you don't seem to be very affected by this or bothered.
Now, 4 days after Cody's disappearance, and armed with the information in that email, Jordan decides to go to Glacier National Park to look for him with her own search party, which includes Hannah, other friends, and family members.
The drive up there was her waving her hand out the window.
You gotta be kidding me.
Her wearing his sunglasses.
Was she driving his car?
Yeah, acting like nothing happened. Dancing, laughing.
When they get up there, Jordan's search party puts up missing posters and looks for possible places from which Cody might have fallen.
I did most of the work. She didn't do nothing.
But when they return the next day to continue the search, Jordan's like a guided missile.
I remember passing so many roads and so many trails and that he could have fell off of. And I was like, what about here? What about here, Jordan? Like, let's go here. And she's like, no, I just know this spot where I just think that he is. We have to go.
They drive to an area known as the Loop, where there's a sheer 300-foot drop with a safety wall.
And we stand there and she's like, I think he's down there. And I was like, what are you talking about? Why would he ever be going down there? Why would anybody do that? This wall is here for a reason.
Jordan jumps the wall and makes her way to a rock landing where she can see to the bottom of the ravine.
She knew exactly how to get down there. She did it like a pro.
And Jordan quickly spots a body lying at the bottom of the ravine.
And she's like, there he is, I see him. There he is. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. I was like, no way.
Jordan's search party alerts surprised authorities.
One of the things she said was that the Holy Spirit led her to know where he was, and that's how she found him.
She says something else that also strikes Detective Corey Clark as very odd.
She said it was a place he wanted to see before he died.
Detective Clark and Kalispell PD Captain Scott Warnell are among those who make the long, hard journey down to the bottom of the ravine. And sure enough, Cody's body is right where Jordan said it was.
In this pristine area at the bottom of a waterfall, you know, with a huge cliff looming above him, and just his body floating in the water there, and in a place that was so remote, I don't think there probably any humans had ever been there.
But Cody's body isn't a pretty sight.
Anytime you're having to recover a body that has fallen 300 plus feet off a cliff, it's not good. So the body itself definitely had damage.
Were you able to ascertain how he fell?
It appeared to us that the way he fell was head first. He had injuries to both arms, to his head.
Friends and family are devastated when they get the tragic news about Cody, seen here blowing out the candles at one of his last birthday parties.
Cody Johnson was a kind, loving, wonderful young man that I miss a lot.
His mother, Sherry, breaks down as she talks about her only child in her first TV interview.
And he was a wonderful person, and he did not deserve this kind of a life. He did not deserve to be murdered.
And Cody's best friend, Jeremiah Herbold, is so overcome with grief as we talk that we have to stop the interview.
I really wish Cody was here. He did so much for everybody. I never realized what he actually did for me until he was gone.
But the only emotion a dry-eyed Jordan is showing appears to be relief.
She mentioned, now that we have the body, we can have the funeral and the cops can be out of it.
She couldn't have been more wrong. Friends couldn't believe the new bride had anything to do with the death of her husband. In fact, in the days following his disappearance, they helped organize the search efforts. But soon, they would discover cracks in Jordan's story. If guests were stunned by how sad and disturbed Jordan Graham looked at her wedding to Cody Johnson, they are now in disbelief at how carefree and unmoved she is at his funeral, just 16 days later.
She's the widow, and she's up front texting her little friend that she's sitting next to, and her mom and dad are in tears. While people were talking about him, and you know, like, the funeral service is going on, and she was on her phone. I was upset about Cody's funeral, but I was furious at her. I couldn't even think about anything else but what was going on with her.
It was a defining moment for Kimberly Martinez, who had been Jordan's matron of honor.
And it was at that moment you knew she was responsible for Cody's death.
I was absolutely positive that she did it.
And Kimberly wasn't the only one.
Everybody was looking at her like, you did this. Everybody knew.
Including the cops, who had quietly gathered enough damning evidence against Jordan to arrest her for the murder of her new husband right there at his funeral if they had wanted. And Jordan didn't have a clue.
She thought everything was gonna be okay. She didn't think that she was gonna get in trouble.
What Jordan didn't know was that cops had determined that email she said she got from the mysterious Tony the Carman was a fake.
And what did you find?
Through subpoenas, we found that the email was generated at her stepfather's house. Eventually found out that Jordan wrote it herself.
Police had also uncovered evidence that Jordan was with Cody at Glacier National Park the night he died. At first, Jordan Graham tried to tell investigators she wasn't with her husband. One big problem with that, of course, is this surveillance camera at the entrance of the park.
There's a photo of a car matching the description of Cody's. You can see two occupants inside, look like Jordan and Cody.
Cell phone tower records also placed Jordan and Cody in the park that night.
Subpoena the cell phone records from her cell phone company, and you get time frames and time stamps.
The FBI take Jordan into custody at her home soon after Cody's funeral.
She was brought into the Kalispell Police Department, and she stood in a room with me and two other federal agents, and she was informed she was under arrest for the murder of her husband. She didn't even flinch. There wasn't even an emotion.
Until Jordan is confronted with the overwhelming evidence against her.
At which point she broke down and cried.
And then she tells all to the FBI, admitting in this audio recording that she hadn't been happy in their 8-day marriage.
Kind of was feeling should have we waited a little bit longer and then got married? I wasn't feeling like it's on cloud nine.
Jordan also admits she and Cody had been arguing at home on the night of his death.
And it was decided they would go to Glacier National Park. Her and Cody then went to the park, proceeded up to the loop, and upon arrival at the loop, they walked across the road and they walked down the loop trail.
Here, Jordan picks up the story in her own words.
I didn't want to do that trail because I was afraid he could fall, and he said I could do this with a blindfold on, and he said I could just put it on, take a step, and I wouldn't even fall. And it kept going through my head that, you know, you are going to fall or something, and then we were arguing some more. And he went to grab my arm or my jacket, and I said, no, I'm going to defend myself. So I kind of let go and I pushed, and he went over.
Plummeting 300 feet to his death.
Out of nowhere, she interjects and says, my husband stated he can wear a blindfold and walk around this dangerous part?
As odd as that is, yes.
A black rag that could have been a blindfold was found near Cody's body at the bottom of the ravine.
Was there a connection?
Only one person knows the answer to that. That's Jordan Graham.
Lead detective Corey Clark believes Jordan may have blindfolded Cody as part of a sex game to lure him to Glacier National Park, quoting statements from church friends who were with Cody earlier on the day of his death.
They stated that Cody was in almost a euphoric mood. He said, well, Jordan has a surprise for me. Some of the male folks that were there, they thought maybe sex.
The surprise was, though, something completely different.
Yes.
The theory that Cody may have been blindfolded could never be proven.
At the time we attempted to submit it, it was really just another piece of physical evidence found at the crime scene. We were precluded from making any arguments as to what it meant to Mr. Johnson or it meant to Ms. Graham's conduct.
Jordan denies in her confession that Cody's murder was premeditated.
There was no planning on your part to kill Cody?
No.
Okay. You hadn't planned that until this whole thing just kind of happened in the heat of the emotion and the passion of that situation.
But Jordan admitted it was no accident.
She stated that he had turned his back to her, he was facing the cliff, and that's when she went up to him and with both hands pushed him in the back off the cliff.
So he would have fallen face first down the hill. Why did you continue to turn around and then push him off?
I think it's because emotions were running so high. I was frustrated, I was angry, I was every emotion I could ever think of, all at once. And just, I've never felt like that before. I've never experienced such high emotions.
Jordan was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and making misleading statements.
Jordan originally takes a plea of not guilty?
That is correct.
Then she changes her plea during trial?
That's right. Shortly before the case was going to be argued to the jury, she decided to enter a plea of guilty to second-degree murder.
Jordan Graham is sentenced to 30 years in federal prison with no chance of parole, in a case that won't soon be forgotten by anyone involved in it.
It is the first time in my experience as a lawyer, 8 days of marriage and ending it with a homicide.
To this day, I still wonder what actually happened just before she pushed Cody off the edge of that cliff.
And Cody's mom would like the answer to just one question.
Why did she do it? If she didn't love him, why did she get married? Why did she say yes to the proposal? That's still the question in my mind to this day, is why.